The scene is set within Nobility Hill, John Stanhope's domain, within one of his repurposed apartments within the building. Not his haven per se, but one of the cut and pasted minimalist fancy apartment suites. Here we find that John Stanhope, the newly appointed Prince of New Sarum, is pacing as best he can with a notepad, pencil in his hand, tapping his chin. There is a whiteboard in the room where Geoffrey, his ghoul, is poised over it with markers, and Ramsay Brody Innes, the newly appointed Seneschal of New Sarum, as the two start discussing the policies they wish to enact to the city to help its regrowth. And the scene begins. So, a name is needed. Rebirth? Restructuring? No, something catchy, something that people can get behind.
Perhaps nothing that implies left-leaning, shall we say, political views, so I would steer clear of such talk as revolution or, yes, you understand, the need for a seamless transition. But at the same time, we must distance ourselves from the previous farce.
Exactly. The kindred of this city have been without proper Camarilla structure for far too long. Too much of a soft hand. We need to be firm, but not tyrannical, at least not at this stage.
Perhaps you have your answer there then, my prince. It is not a rebirth or a revolution. It is a return of the Camarilla to New Sarum, the Camarilla which is always carried on out with the chaos of the city. That order is returning as it once stood.
Return of order, perhaps. Well, let's just recap. I'm holding the Elysium at the Black Orchid. I think that's a good enough symbol of the rebirth of the establishment in the city, back when Elysium's held importance.
Yes, it also projects your gravitas to hold the Elysium in a domain that you yourself control and hold ownership of. To use even one of my domains would invite talk of powers behind the throne and such. It is much better to show that such things, while useful, are not necessarily needed by the one who holds the praxis.
I'm hoping that this will inspire other kindred to create their own Elysiums. I remember when I was Keeper, every clan had their own Elysium, or at least had plans to, which is why I wish to keep the Keeper of Elysium role vacant for the time being. Allow the kindred to project their ingenuity and creativity in Elysiums, and then once this period of restructuring is over, we can take the best and the brightest into the court.
Yes, politically it is wise. It is my feeling at this moment that putting an intermediary between a new prince and the, well, peasantry, shall we say, would be unwise, as for now they have to get to understand you, and you have to come to understand them to some extent, my prince. Going through an intermediary for such things at this time lessens your impact, makes you seem as distant as the previous princes. No, a policy of accessibility for the moment, yes. In time we can place the proper barriers between you and the riffraff as necessary.
Well, that's what I have you for.
Indeed, yes. Not that I feel the aforementioned riffraff would be too keen to come into my study with their complaints very often. Nonetheless, I will leave it open for them as an open forum.
Which is exactly the sort of court I wish to inhabit. A traditional prince. Not like Lysander, who wished to create love with his people. No. We need a well balance of respect and fear.
Yes, fear and love are a powerful combination. While he spoke very often of equality, I suppose he provided it somewhat by offering no leadership whatsoever, therefore everyone was equal in providing their own leadership. But as for love, being inaccessible, being absent, do not promote such things. Guidance will promote love, and enforcement of that guidance through fear will promote the, shall we say, facade of power, which of course will sit in front of the actual fist, the velvet glove, as they put it.
Yes, I have no illusions, Mr. Proteanus. I am not well loved in the city, but I am certainly respected. A much more powerful tool, I feel, especially in this chaos of a city I seem to have inherited.
I think that you sell yourself short to some extent. Certainly the neonates of my own clan are very appreciative of your assistance in many matters, and they have not reported any specific complaints regarding your stewardship of Clan Ventru up till now.
What do you think of my proclamation for presentation?
Oh, Ramses unable to hide his amusement. His eyebrows pop up when you mention it. Yes, an interesting political tool. It will let us know, at least on the surface, who our friends and enemies will be. It also gives the Anarchs enough rope to hang themselves with.
This does excuse me. This does pose the question of what happens if the Anarchs and the Independents do present themselves.
Perhaps the sheriff should happen if they fail to present themselves.
Ah, that is the plan, of course. If they fail to present themselves, we have every right within the Camarilla to exercise our right to either exile them from the city or exile them from this universe entirely. But if they present themselves, that is the problem. If Mr. Dunsern and his brood march in, I have no particular rights to withhold their stay within the city, but I can certainly make it more difficult for them.
I would not expect Dunsern to antagonize the court. It's not been his MO up till now. The Anarchs, on the other hand, I'm not so certain. But who can say?
Something to consider. I have a few policies I wish to announce within the Elysium itself. It has become evident with the current problems within the city, especially when it comes to those that we haven't been able to tackle, the Asylum, Apollo, for instance, that the court itself has been lacking any particular power, apart from individual power, of course, and gaining momentum within the city has always been a problem. It has taken far too much time for the court to react to a problem. which is why I impose this, a tithe to be paid monthly by the city's clans via their primogen. Around 10% of their monthly income or goods and services thereof, depending on the clan. I can't exactly expect the Nosferatu to give Ventru capital, but I can certainly ask them to bring in contacts and information, influence in various areas which we do not expand.
Pooling of resources is certainly worth exploring. I would say that it may be an interesting way of keeping the clans at each other's throats to some extent, for they will be clamouring to outdo each other in this sense every single month, which may keep them more attempting to favour your grace rather than their own.
My thoughts exactly. My idea is to present it as thus: that this tithe is for the established order of the Camarilla. It is for all loyal members to request its usage, so we may have kindred new to the city, or even neonates, petition yourself or myself for the use of this particular fund. As such, we can harvest boons under a different name, for their name to be put to the top of the list, plus adding this velvet glove, allowing new businesses and enterprise to thrive, while having our fingers already on the button.
Yes, such a thing does keep the expansion into the purview of the prince, as it always should be. This is your domain now. It would also encourage the younger Camarilla kindred to work together, which would be of great assistance. They do tend to, from my experience here, lead quite disparate clan-based relationships. It is unhealthy for a Camarilla city to many degrees. It also pushes them more in the direction of the Anarchs, who work with more of a wide, shall we say, gene pool.
You know, Mr. Brodianus, that I was part of the first coterie in New Sarah?
No, I did not.
Indeed, we were the first kindred. A couple of Nosferatu, a few Toreador and 2 Ventru, decided to work together, and as such they all rose to prominent members of power. 2 of which became Primogen, 1 a Harpy, and myself, it's obvious, and another worked behind the scenes. It was due to that I believe I've risen so high, or at least learnt more about the political goings-on. As such, I'd like to promote this view of coterieship, which is why once we have the presentation and the list of all participating Camarilla members within the city, I will group them within rounds of 3, forcing coteries as it were, and get them on tasks for the reordering of the city, placing them or entrusting them to expand or gain business or control, influence within areas in which the court needs, for paltry rewards, status, money, perhaps even trivial boons, depending on how generous I feel.
Might I suggest, my prince, that these draws of 3 are not entirely random? The warding system has allowed us an interesting opportunity to get closer to some of the younger kindred. I've taken this opportunity with both hands. If my wards were to be one of the 3 in each case, then we would have, shall we say, an insider in terms of each coterie, which would allow us to remain abreast of what their activities are on any given activity at which they are set.
I will leave it to you then. I will give you a list of the things I wish to achieve for the court, and you can create the teams yourself to be presented to me.
I will draw up the list expediently, as you will have come to expect.
Do you have any suggestions for the restructuring of the court, Mr. Brody Innes?
Hmm. I had considered a few, but with the current clientele, it is difficult to say for the moment who would be suitable for any additional roles. For the moment, I agree with your assessment that a traditional court would be appropriate. Once perhaps your pool of resources is established, a chancellor of some kind to oversee them would be wise, but perhaps not someone who we want to be too close to the business, someone who you have your thumb on.
It is my right as prince to sire my own brood.
Of course, a member of your clan would be the most suitable, I would think.
Yes. Problems for the future. For the moment, my main policy as prince is to create an ironclad control of the mortal populace. It has been left to wane under the inefficient rule of failing princes. Right now, we have barely enough influence to save the masquerade if someone was so brazen as to break it unsubtly. And that is our first call of business.
Of course, the first tradition is always the first duty of all kindred. I do have certain contacts of my own, but whether they could specifically be set to this task, I can, perhaps through them, gain access to other quarters. The British ambassador, based in Boston, is a, shall we say, close friend of mine. And he can get you places in terms of government. Maybe not to the highest places per se, but close enough that you can gain access to individuals and information that would otherwise be privileged. So for my own part, I can offer that much service. However, obviously within the local authorities, we must begin to make our presence felt, but subtle enough that they can still operate in somewhat of an autonomous level without waiting for the thumbs up from ourselves.
I find national policy to be less useful to kindred life than local government. And this new wave of democracy that seems to be sweeping this country, well, I say new wave, is less useful to us. I would rather have someone who stays in office for decades rather than a bare score of years, which is why we should concentrate on the bureaucracy that makes the wheels turn rather than the figureheads that the mortals enjoy to look at.
Yes. Yes, the policymakers are often situated several levels beneath the leadership, so to speak. It is not how it...
You'll find when it comes...
Well, not how it should be, in my opinion. Leadership is about leaders, not about committees.
Just so. But we cannot blame the mortals for their fervour.
No, not at all. It seems almost...
That should be our goal.
Yes, it seems almost interesting blueprint for your own plan in terms of the illusion of control, the illusion of choice. Democracy provides just that. When so many people are merely bystanders to the actual decisions being taken, interacting with it only on a very superfluous level.
Speaking of my own leadership, I fear it happened a little too easily.
No, there is nothing to fear, not for such as ourselves. For we will not be slaves to policy, we will be the ones who guide policy. From the ground up, from our contacts on the ground floor of Kindred Society, right through to the mortals doing the work. That is your dream, and I wish to see it fulfilled, my prince.
Your confidence is assuring, Mr. Brodionis, but I do want you to keep an eye on Mr. Cole. He backed down a little too quickly, and I'm surprised that his, or at least Lysander's allies in the Bruja and the Toreador were willing to back off so quickly.
I fear Mr. Crowley is no one's ally, truly, but his own. As for Mr. Cole, I think he is hoping for a little bit of the Aronson in you, shall we say, rather than affixing himself to a two-way leadership contest in which sides would be created and lines would be drawn and compromises would have to be made. He simply believes he has to await your failure.
Well, let us give him no course. Which moves me on to the problems we must face within the city. This rumour of a plague bearer. I have given the matter much thought, and the only policy I have come up with will be an exceedingly unpopular one.
Does it involve fire, my prince?
No. A withdrawal of feeding rights within the city. No kindred may feed from a vessel outside of their own haven or domain, unless they are attending an Elysium, at which they may only drink the tailored bottle vitae supplied by my own stores. They may regain this right if they willingly submit themselves to a blood test via one of my many blood clinics, so we can check and knock off the list of who this plague bearer could be.
Perhaps an interesting opportunity, my prince. I would like to distance myself from the actual blood screenings, so to speak, as yours are the clinics, so to speak. But it may also be an opportunity to, shall we say, take a little more than necessary. That way, if any of the kindred become uppity, my clan's unique gifts may be turned against them.
This is the problem. Having you as a seneschal in respect and gaining access to many kindred's blood would certainly involve fear, but also much distrust, especially for one of my first proclamations. I do not feel that this particular announcement will garner me any support. In fact, it may rally the city against me. Kindred are very uppity about their blood.
Yes, but surely they should be equally uppity about their feeding. Hunger will win out in the end. Unfortunately, any holding off, shall we say, will either succumb to some state of frenzy or, worse, defy the proclamation.
Which is why we need Cole to start getting hounds as soon as possible. We need to make sure that we can police this.
I fear I may have denied him young apprentice Schmidt. He seemed most disappointed when I named him Harpy.
I always thought Mr. Schmidt would be a much better Harpy than a hound. The way I see it, the Harpies will be our spy network. All information from all vestiges of society will filter through you and then to me. While as the Scourges will be the secret police, the hounds simply the enforcers. They all have their roles to play, and keep our ears to the ground and our fist firmly in the face of those who deny us.
Yes. A fist with a velvet glove, as we have said.
Now, we have spoken briefly on the Anarchs and the Giovanni within the city. How possible do you think it is to actually work against them directly, given our state of the court at the moment?
There should be no trouble in, if we so wished, removing the Anarchs entire. But, as you say, such a thing can often bring repercussions from other like-minded kindred. It is more wiser, as you have said, to assassinate them politically before actually assassinating them. As for the Giovanni, while Dunstan remains in the city, attacking them directly would be eminently foolish. But we must make it clear to them that they must work within the confines of the Camarilla, certain that they can be suitably convinced to do so.
If Mr. Dunstan does present himself, I will give him the rights to remain within the city, limit his domain, since he will have to earn it.
Does he have the domain at this time?
I believe unofficially.
A Giovanni was given domain in the city. Things have slipped somewhat.
He's also been given status in the Camarilla. If you would believe such tomfoolery.
Was this Lysander's doing?
Lysander or Iris or one of the other incompetents. I lose track.
My word. And what did he have to do to gain this status?
I don't know, sleep with a nun, I suspect.
I dare say that fucker thought it was Christmas when he turned up here.
I am afraid we do not have the, let's just say, aura the wolf projected. He was far too lenient in allowing them to spread, and then, unchecked, they have been like a virus within this city.
Yes, they do seem to have gobbled up almost anything that was going. But there's plenty left for the rest of us, providing they can continue to work in the best interests of the city and the court.
This is my proposal. Since he is an outsider wishing to live within Camarilla City, he will also be made to produce a tithe. This tithe will be 20% of his monthly income, if he wishes to remain in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Also, with us pushing influence and gaining a control on the city, we will start leaking into his areas of domain. The research that Mr. Smith had done on the Giovanni holdings will come in great handy with this, as we start pushing Camarilla neonates into his territory. He will soon be, well, there's only so much one man can do when being attacked on so many fronts.
Indeed. It will be interesting to see how he responds to such a move. We've never known him to be given to rash action. I believe it will take a lot to promote a direct response.
As long as the Giovanni decide to keep their place and fund the Camarilla as they should as guests, then perhaps they will have a place in the city for the foreseeable future. But this arrogant display of power within Camarilla City must stop.
Yes, it is unsightly. While he remains in the city, there is always a danger. Perhaps we can find some way to convince him to simply move on.
I haven't met any of the other Giovanni, not on a personal level. Are they more tractable? Could we persuade them to
My apprentices have encountered at least 2 others, and they seem well disposed towards my clan for reasons unknown. Having said that, it seems almost everyone else treats us with a certain suspicion, disdain. I'm not entirely unused to this, but from other Camarilla clans it is quite disturbing to see that they take more to, shall we say, befriending Giovanni and their bars than visiting. That seems to be the way things have been run lately. Back to the topic, though, the Giovanni in question did appear to be very well disposed towards us. They have not acted unfavourably. In fact, they did at one point act to defend, I understand, one of my wards, which was very kind of them. I saw fit to not reward them for such duty, but yet they did not ask for such reward. Therefore, I can only assume they are, for now, on the level and okay to do the right thing. The issue with the Giovanni is not what they are doing, it's what they are capable of. The problem with the Giovanni is always that they will act only in their own best interests, therefore they must be made to see that their best interests are from supporting a strong prince, or they may attempt to make one of their own.
Just so. We will see which way they jump, and then improvise our plans from there.
You have been in the city as long as Dunsir has. Do you have any sort of relationship with him?
One of equal parts business and antagonism. We have wrestled over various parts of influence in the past, and although we have a mutual respect for one another, when it comes to the area of politics and business, we are not friends.
But there is a respect there to some extent. Do you think you could convince him to back you to some point?
Perhaps, but what will that show? That I will be another one of these fawning princes of Camarilla that goes over backwards for the favour of an independent clan.
Not if the backing is in the form of the tithe you've proposed. Then it is a tax imposed upon him, not a favour granted by him.
Yes. Time for them to start paying their way.
Indeed, they seem to have enough to go round.
I suppose we should speak of the elephant in the room.
No. Yes, the rather maddening elephant that seems to be disturbing all around her with her trumpeting.
How is your clan with their research and response to this threat?
Smith spoke of various occurrences in the night. It seems to have dried up somewhat of late. My latest reports indicate that, well, this Mogan's character was once part of the British court and vanished at some point in the past, 50 years or so. A trifle compared to the amount of time he appears to have lived. He came to London some time ago. But our studies into the asylum itself, Apprentice Schmidt reports that it has only been in place for the past 5 years. Some sort of renovation took place there. Although the central building, I'm given to understand, was there before the asylum was constructed. Our attempts to pierce the veil of what it was used for before this time are meeting with a strange level of shall we say, knowingness. There appeared to be very little record in what that building was used for previously. It appears to have been abandoned for some time. Therefore, I can only assume its use was far more ancient. How it remained standing for that length of time, I cannot say.
As far as my own contacts have been aware within the London court, Dr. Morgan was something of a recluse. issuing papers and theories on perfect sanity, and experimented on mortals, sane and insane alike, with the use of the Malkav's cursed blood.
Was there any indication as to why he would have come here? The official record is lacking in any reason why.
Unfortunately, the trail goes cold when he goes to Scotland. I have no pull within the Scottish courts.
Ramsay's eyes glint slightly. I, however, have a little bit more. Do you know precisely when he arrived?
John uses his idyllic memory to
throw a rough date. Yeah.
to throw off a date that I can't remember.
Ramsay pulls out his tablet, nodding as he punches down the details you give him, making a note to contact a few individuals back home, particularly the Lord and quite possibly the Regent of Glasgow, that camp bastard. He then slides his tablet back into its case. I will make some discreet inquiries, and I will make them promptly. The sooner we deal with this, the better. If there is, as some of the Malkavians appear to be predicting, something ancient lurking there, then it stands to reason that this building would be old.
It does not fill me with confidence. All the evidence points to something very old. And we have all heard tales of what happens when very old kindred decide to wake up.
Indeed, in that case I believe these dreams would only be the beginning. So far I myself am unaffected by them. I dare say I do not wish to be embraced with such visions. So I shall seek to avoid them by solving this problem. The full resources of Clan Tremere are, as always, at your disposal on this matter. If there are any matters of research or direct action requiring your assistance, you have but to ask.
See if you can get your magics to neutralize the area around the asylum. Try and counter it with our own. I hear that the Tremere Thormont tree can be tailored to pretty much anything, as long as they have enough talented individuals within the Chantries.
Yes, with enough focus and a lot of vitae. Such a thing may be possible, but it would have to be made clear to us precisely the terms in which you wish us to subdue, shall we say, the area. Is there some sort of curse hanging over the building?
There's some, from our failed attempt to infiltrate the building, it seems that there is a aura of dread surrounding the central building, and then when within, a aura of entire bliss. I'm not sure if this is a manifestation of the Elder's simply presence, or something other supernatural going on. But what I can show you, he says, pulling out or thumbing through various cupboards, is a thumb drive. This is from the recording of the raid taken from the individuals themselves. Notice on hour 2:53 minutes 5 seconds that a mortal speaks a language in which we don't understand.
Are you playing this now?
He's not playing it, he's just saying it.
Alright. Would Ramsay be able to access this now?
If there's a thumb drive on your tablet, yes.
I don't know. Let's just chance dice that. It wouldn't surprise me. Nope, he doesn't have a USB on his tablet. There you go. I rolled a 1.
You wish me to touch a computer?
Ramsay nods and says, "Is there any way I can view this? I am somewhat of a, not authority, but a reasonable, shall we say, dabbler in ancient languages."
John merely gestures towards the ghoul, who scurries out into the various apartment buildings to find a laptop. and scurries back.
So upon hearing the strange speech, and they play it over and over again for him to get a good listen to it, Ramsay sits and intently views it, kind of looks down from the screen so he can simply listen to the words playing over and over again. He shakes his head in incomprehension. It's not a dialect I'm familiar with. May I keep a copy of that? There are scholars within our chantries who may provide more success in at least identifying the language.
Do so. You can take that copy. I have currently entrusted the Ventral Harpy, Lord Brepon, to be our representative in this matter.
Is he capable?
He's certainly enthusiastic of ridding us of this problem.
Well, that is at least the first step. But enthusiasm married with capability will perhaps bring it down to some extent. What is it that this... You, I understand, are one of the gentlemen who have suffered from the visions. What does it entail? What do you take from it? What, if any, meaning can be gathered from these visions?
John has nothing in a cult. So he's... I have no idea.
I got nothing, Ramsay.
To me.
Ramsay sort of takes your sort of blank expression as, an incomprehension, as I thought, perhaps. Perhaps we need a more fractured mind to piece it together. The gentleman Haikal seemed quite close to the situation. Perhaps a more private chat can be arranged with him.
It is our opinion that Mr. Haikal has been influenced by this creature via the powers of Dominate. So do tread carefully.
If so, at least it may give us a direct line to ask it what the fuck it wants. If anything. If simply to awake, then we may be able to find a way to prevent that. Though I'm given to understand that such old things require an awful lot of blood, and I'm actually going to roll and see if I knew I'd need these dice. Here we go. I'm going to roll pure intelligence. Oh, that's a pretty good roll. Ramsay sort of nods his head. Yes, it would seem to me that something requiring so much blood, a facility such as that, directly above it, or around it, or whatever, would seem to be very opportune.
It does seem to be a private city unto itself.
Yes, or perhaps a private feasting area for when it rises.
In that case, perhaps we can prevent its rising by starving it out. Although trying to reposition all those mortals is going to be a tricky situation.
But I'm given to understand that recent developments are interesting. This botched job at the asylum may give us an interesting opportunity to suggest the relocation of not the service, but actually relocated to a different facility, a more secret facility, perhaps. Even in part to break up the prison.
Somewhere away from New Sarum.
If possible. There may be contacts in Boston.
I wonder if we could perhaps...
I may be able to inflict some political pressure on
Boston,
this man.
put it in... that would be perfect. Maybe try and palm it off to Portland. The new prince there will certainly have his ear full of trouble. He can take some of ours.
Mr. Hidosha, yes, perhaps. Perhaps an invitation to aid their regeneration. Perhaps we could even give him some of our Giovanni problem. Perhaps tip off our good friend, Mr. Duncern, that facility built in Portland would be able to receive such individuals. Of course, Mogans may be furious about such a move, but at least it would not hamper or rather, it would not constitute a direct assault, and therefore would not open us to the threat of the Elder's whimsical mind, which seems to be paralysing by the sounds of things.
I've requested that this Dr. Mogans present himself. I am hoping that he will take the bait, so we may have as you say, a direct line to whatever this thing is, and try and figure out what the hell the Malkavian is doing within the city. If he does not, then we have every right to go in there and exterminate it.
Yes, indeed. It may not be the easiest thing to do, but it will be the right thing to do. Perhaps cutting off the head will kill the snake. And Haikal may be able to draw him out, to some extent at least. Although he may, as our intermediary, Haikal may be more apt to warn the gentleman.
I do not feel that Mr. Haikal has an inch of subterfuge in him. He is irritatingly naive and high in his humanitas, not really living in this world, so when dealing with him, Mr. Brodian, is best speak to him like a child, tell him what he wants to hear, and he will babble forth what you wish to hear.
I see, yes. I've encountered such individuals before. They do not understand that it is through mastery of the self, not of fawning humanity, that one comes to true enlightenment.
John takes the meaning. He is only halfway through the book on his plane journey to Berlin. Some of the ideas set within have appealed to John's own ambition and strive for success, while others have scared him to his core, something deep within him, unwilling to sever the last few ties he has of his humanity.
Ramsay,
but he does not wish for his...
Knowing that this tome has changed hands, Ramsay sort of like, as he makes that statement, his eyes sort of glint up and focus on the prince, looking to see his reaction to that knowledge, to see if it's beginning to worm its way into him. And he decides to sort of up the ante somewhat, to push the point home slightly harder, as he says in his kind of whispered tones. I believe in a prince it is a very prized quality to be able to control one's self, to control one's emotions entirely. To control the self is to control the outside world, and control is precisely what you will require, my prince. I hope to be able to bring you a measure of control.
John will roll a perception empathy to see how receptive he is to that, because that's one thing he does need, especially with these waking dreams, is control. So, perception 2, empathy 4.
I can throw charisma leadership at you as well if you want.
yeah, please. That'll be wonderful.
He shoots. And Ramsay's charisma specialty, which I don't appear to have written down. That's a shame. It must be on the forum. But I'm pretty sure it's in dealing with one-on-one situations in some extent. So I'm going to bring it into play and say 4 successes. Until I can find the damn thing that make me lower to 3. But that should be enough. 6 cumulative successes here.
So John can see that Mr. Brodian is obviously wielding his own opinions here, but because of his very logical, and he knows the audience in which he is speaking, the idea of inner control is one that appeals to the new prince, and he smiles and finds himself nodding. Unknown to Mr. Brodianus, John has taken a vast quantity of medical antipsychotics to calm his mood, and he despises being beholden to anything, including mortal drugs. To gain control of his mind again is something that he deeply desires.
Ah, yes. It has always been said that princedom comes with a price, but it truly does not if you are prepared to pay that price. Only people who cannot afford it truly bear the brunt of the cost. I believe you to be a man who, shall we say, bears a strong inner voice, who is able to grasp the reins of power, to listen to all around him, but at the same time merely allow it to be information focusing your internal drive to push you further. Heed not the words of these babbling, eye-rolling, bug-eyed druids who wish you to be more than human. You're already more than human, my prince. At least I believe so.
This philosophy in which you spout certainly appeals. It is beholden to the acts of nobility, of noblesse oblige, the responsibilities of those in power to rule justly, which is appealing to men of our stature. What are the first stages towards this enlightenment, Mr. Brodianus?
To first embrace what you wish to embrace, you must first let go of what you wish to let go, Mr. Well, shall I say, my prince. Forgive me. I do so grow unaccustomed to addressing people in, shall we say, a superior way. And you must also come to rankle against that. As prince, it is not simply your desire, it is not simply your actions of gravitas, it is in fact your will, your indomitable will, my prince, to rule, to be in control, to have the power. You must simply make it so. But anything that inspires you to relinquish that, you see, those ties of emotion, those binding things that do not follow the structured hierarchy of you over them, my prince. Anything not within those boundaries is simply an anchor, a dead weight, another way that the world will utilize, another way that the beast will grind at you, will poke at you with its claws. By removing such things, you defang it almost entirely. By removing such attachments, such needs, such wastes of your effort. And then your entire will, your entire self will be focused towards the true goal of any Ventrue indeed, and of many more enlightened Tremere, which is the cultivation and maintenance of the Camarilla's power. You can become an extension and indeed what is it they call us? A pillar of that structure. Or you can seek to be the statue that stands upon the pillar, the Nelson to the column, if you'll pardon the Londonian expression.
The princedom is indeed a public service. It is not a position that begets one's playground. The Camarilla and the continued existence of our kind must always take precedence. I will think on the words you have spoken, Mr. Brodianus. My seneschal, you have given me good advice.
I hope to continue to do so in all the nights to come, my prince, and let you see that that appointment was certainly one of your first best decisions, and I'm sure the first of many, my prince.
Just so. Unless you have anything to add, I will formulate my speech this evening for the huddled masses.
No, I would not wish to impose upon such a excellent orator as yourself. You do seem very articulate, which for a man of your admitted, shall we say, less than noble birth, is very admirable. You have certainly dragged yourself up, and through such have gained great insight. I'm sure you have much to play upon and much to appeal to all quarters of society, even those who may see you as the oppressive blue blood may come to realise that you are a working man made good, and now of mixed blue and red blood, with just a little bit of purple thrown in. And Ramsay stands up and begins collecting his gear with a bow.
The prince goes back to his notes, pencil in hand. He simply nods to the seneschal as a simple dismissal, his mind already abuzz with how he's going to present this to the court, and a small nagging voice speaking of what he must cut away to continue his princedom. And we'll end the scene there.